In the United States, there are roughly 700 different species of ants and about 8,000 different species of bees and wasps that all have the potential to sting. We remember that insects have 3 distinct body segments: the head, thorax, and abdomen. At the tip of the abdomen of some insects, there is a stinger. This stinger is attached to a venom sac, so that when the insect stings, it can inject a chemical to help control its prey or give it a chance to flee from a predator. Now, let's look at some of the stinging insects we might find in our backyards. Fire ants are red and black in color and are known for their painful, burning sting that leaves an itching blister on the skin. These ants are not initially from here. They were introduced into the United States in the 1930s in Mobile, Alabama. Scientists think the ants traveled in the soil used to balance ships and have been spreading since. Fire ants use many tunnels to enter and exit their mound, unlike other species of ants that have only one entry and exit hole. So why are fire ant mounds so big? There are 2 main reasons. First, they want to avoid the soggy soil conditions that come with heavy rainfall. Second, by building the mound up so high, they can take advantage of the sun to warm the sides of the mound, producing warmer conditions for raising the brood or babies inside the mound. When it begins to get too hot, the ants move the brood or babies down below the soil where it is cooler. One queen fire ant can have up to 400,000 babies. If the area becomes flooded, these ants work together to create a floating mat to survive until the water dries up or they reach a hard surface. That is what you call teamwork. So why would fire ants need a stinger? When their nest is disturbed, they aggressively attack to protect their young and their queen. They also eat a wide variety of things and have been known to swarm an insect or an animal to take it down. So these ants need a stinger for protection and as a weapon for hunting food. Another ant that is commonly seen is the harvester ant. Many people call them fire ants because they look similar, but these are no fire ants. Harvester ants are much larger, eat different food, and build a different home than fire ants do. Harvester ant nests only have 2 main entry and exit holes. It is also flat and surrounded by the shells of seeds and insect bodies. These ants only use the stinger to protect their nest and are not as defensive as fire ants are. There are many other species of ants in your backyard, but the most important thing to remember is to look but don't touch. Watching ants can be quite interesting. There are even scientists that only study ants. When we say there are 8,000 different types of bees and wasps in the United States, what is the first kind of bee or wasp you think of? Is it the honeybee that makes delicious honey for us to eat, or is it the wasp that built its home under the roof of the porch? Maybe it's the wasp or bee that stung you that one time when you were at a picnic. Regardless of what type you thought of, it is an important insect. Let's take a look at a few wasps and bees and see how they are important for the environment. This common wasp often goes unnoticed. It is a solitary wasp called a thread-waisted wasp. Notice the thin waist? This wasp hunts caterpillars, then uses a stinger to paralyze them. It then carries the caterpillar back to the burrow and lays an egg on it. She will then close the burrow with dirt and pebbles and make sure it is disguised from other predators. This species is very beneficial to the environment and us. They tend to prey on caterpillars that destroy our yards and our crops. This bee looks like a honeybee, but it is not. It is related to the honeybee, but prefers to live a solitary life. It is called a plasterer bee, or some call it a ground bee. Each female excavates her own nest, choosing the perfect location with morning sun and well-draining soil. She throws the excavated soil out of the tunnel where it collects around the nest opening. She then creates small cells and, using her mouth parts, coats the interior of the cell with a polyester-type material secreted by her salivary glands. which helps to weatherproof the cell. The female then collects pollen and nectar and forms a mass, on top of which she lays a single egg. She then closes the cell and moves on to the next. The babies will hatch the following spring. There are many different types of scolled wasps. These wasps are usually considered beneficial insects because they help control green June beetles and other grubs. Adult scolled wasps feed on nectar and pollen of flowers. These wasps also paralyze the grubs to lay the egg. After several days, the grub regains movement and will carry the egg around until it is time to hatch. Scolled wasps do not sting unless stepped on or carelessly handled. There are thousands of species of ichneumons in North America, and many are hard to tell apart. Only a few can sting, and only do so when stepped on or carelessly handled. These wasps are considered beneficial because they help control insect numbers by eliminating many insects before they even reach adulthood. During the spring, people often notice large, black bees hovering around the outside of their homes. These are likely to be Carpenter Bees, named for their habit of excavating holes in wood to raise their babies. Carpenter bees look similar to bumblebees but have a shiny, hairless abdomen. Carpenter bees are less likely to sting than a wasp and bees that live in colonies. Still, male carpenter bees can be intimidating when they hover in front of people who are around a nesting site. No need to worry though, the males are harmless, since they do not have a stinger. Female carpenter bees can sting but will seldom do so, unless they are handled or bothered by people. This beautiful tiny wasp is quite the thief. It is called the cuckoo wasp, and is known for laying its eggs in the nests of other wasps, so that the babies can eat the other bee larvae and then the stored food. This behavior makes the cuckoo wasp a parasite to many other bees and wasps, and even walking sticks. This wasp is capable of stinging, but it is a very small stinger, so when it feels threatened, it tends to roll up into a ball to protect itself. This wasp doesn't need to hide. It is the largest native wasp, the cicada killer. The female wasp hunts and paralyzes the cicada, carries it back to the burrow where she will lay an egg on it and close the cell. She will do this all summer. She does have a large stinger and if threatened will use it, but they are not aggressive and do not have nest guarding instincts. You can walk through areas where they are active without attracting attention. Males lack stingers but are territorial. While they can't hurt you, it is just best to walk away. Here is another interesting wasp that uses caterpillars and fly larvae to lay their eggs. This is a very small wasp, but notice how large the back legs are. Most bees and wasps are considered solitary or live alone and tend to go unnoticed. They are busy foraging for food or working hard to build a nest for the next generation. They come in many sizes and colors, and some are even disguised as ants, like this velvet ant, which is really a wasp with a long, painful stinger. The bees and wasps you most likely notice are the ones that live in communities, like honeybees. Honeybees are excellent pollinators and make delicious honey for us and other wildlife to eat, but they can sting if they feel threatened. Wasps and many bees can sting more than once because they can pull out their stinger without injuring themselves. Only honeybees have a special hook on their stinger that keeps the stinger in the skin after a person is stung. The stinger gets torn out of the bee's body as it tries to fly away. As a result, the honeybee dies after stinging. Several wasp species live in communities, building nests from chewed wood, making them look as if they were made from paper. Wasps are most active during the day and usually return to their nest at dusk, and most species of wasp live less than 1 year. Some common wasps are the yellow jacket, bald-faced hornet, and a variety of paper wasp. These wasps eat a wide variety of things, to include pest insects, the scraps of food you throw out while on a picnic, and even spiders and other wasps and bees. Here, we see a paper wasp collecting wood to add to her nest. Let's take a moment and watch how these wasps add to their nest and care for the babies living in the nest. Let's take a moment and see how these wasps care for the babies living in the nest. Let's take a look at another nesting species, the bumblebee. We have several native bumblebee species, but they often get confused with the carpenter bee. Notice how the abdomen is hairy? That is how we know that it is a bumblebee and not a carpenter bee. Bumblebees nest underground, particularly in abandoned holes made by rodents. Bumblebees are just as important for pollinating as the honeybees are. They do what is called buzz pollination, where they beat their wings 130 beats per second or more and vibrate the pollen off the flower. It is important to remember that all of these insects play an important role in the ecosystem. Bees pollinate much of our food, as well as provide food for birds and other wildlife. Wasps and hornets tend to be thought of as the bad guys, but many of them eat other insects, including pests such as caterpillars and flies. They are also food for birds and wildlife. Bees, wasps, and ants may look different and have different types of homes, but they all sting when they are upset. If a bee or wasp flies around you, stay calm and don't swat at it. If you get stung, tell an adult and go indoors right away. Taking time to learn about these insects allows us to appreciate what they do for us even more. A great place to start discovering more about these amazing insects is at your local library.